Have you ever had the feeling that a bird appeared near you in a way that seemed too strange to be a coincidence? Maybe you were walking along distracted, sitting in a park, or just looking out your window at home, when suddenly, a bird lands right beside you. It doesn't fly away. It doesn't seem scared. On the contrary, it just stays there, watching you for a few seconds, as if it's analyzing your every move. And the strangest part, it happens more than once, on different days, in different places, as if that bird truly recognizes you. Now think about it with me. Why would a wild animal choose to approach one specific person? Is there a scientific explanation for this behavior in birds? Or are we dealing with something far more curious than we ever imagined? What you're about to discover might surprise you. A lot of people believe encounters like these are purely random. After all, birds are everywhere, on the streets, on rooftops, on power lines, in city trees. But certain behaviors catch the attention of even specialized animal behavior researchers, because there are cases where certain birds don't just approach humans. They return repeatedly to the same people. They observe, they follow, and sometimes they seem to form a kind of silent bond. And maybe you've already experienced this without even realizing it. Some people report that a bird shows up every morning at the same window. Others say that certain birds always land nearby when they're walking alone. Some notice fixed stares, calculated movements, unusual approaches, behaviors that seem to completely break away from what you'd naturally expect from a wild animal. But here comes the most intriguing part. Science has already proven that many bird species possess a far more advanced intelligence than we imagined just a few years ago. Crows can recognize human faces. Pigeons identify complex visual patterns. Some birds can memorize routines, schedules, and even distinguish specific individuals within a crowd. That means maybe that bird truly knows who you are. And when we begin to understand how the minds of these animals work, everything shifts in perspective. Because birds don't observe the world the way we do. They analyze safety, behavior, repetitive movements, emotions, and environments with an extremely refined level of precision. In many cases, they pick up on details that go completely unnoticed by any human being. Now imagine this. While you're going through your normal daily routine, there could be a bird that's been watching your habits for days, or even weeks. Does that sound like an exaggeration? Then stay with me until the end, because some of the studies and accounts about recurring bird behavior in everyday human life are simply unbelievable. And there's another detail that makes everything even more mysterious. These approaches don't always have anything to do with food. That's the point that puzzles specialists the most. Because in many of these accounts, the person never fed the bird, never tried to interact with it, and yet the behavior keeps happening. The bird reappears. It keeps its distance from other people, but shows curiosity specifically toward one individual. Coincidence? Maybe. But the more similar cases emerge around the world, the harder it becomes to ignore the pattern. Some urban birds have developed impressive levels of adaptation to the human environment. They learn routes, identify safe locations, and form extremely sophisticated associations. But in certain situations, the behavior seems to go beyond simple survival instinct. It's almost as if there's recognition, familiarity, conscious observation. And you know what's most curious about all of this? Many people only notice these signs after they start paying real attention. Because sometimes the bird isn't just passing by. Sometimes it's coming back. And when we start analyzing the reasons behind these unexpected approaches, that's when the story gets even more fascinating. And while you're thinking back on those moments, maybe a bird that appeared near you several times, or that strange feeling of being watched by a bird for no apparent reason, I wanted to ask you something important. If this topic resonates with you, share your experience in the comments. It might seem like a small thing, but you have no idea how many people go through similar situations and never had the courage to talk about it. And sometimes, when someone shares a story, other people realize they're not alone in that feeling. So tell me, has something like this ever happened to you? A bird that kept showing up, stayed there watching, came back multiple times, or behaved in an unusual way. I genuinely want to read what you have to say, because many of the upcoming videos come directly from the stories you share here. And there's another very important detail. When you comment, YouTube understands that this content is relevant and starts delivering the video to more people who are interested in animal behavior, curiosities, and the mysteries of nature. In other words, your participation helps this kind of content keep existing and reach for more people. If you're enjoying this investigation so far, go ahead and like the video. It might seem like a small gesture, but it strengthens the channel enormously and shows that it's worth bringing more in-depth content about birds, animal intelligence, and these behaviors that almost nobody notices in everyday life. And the more people interact, the more incredible stories show up here. And if at any point in this video, you feel that shiver of curiosity, that sensation of, this is far stranger than it seems, hit the hype button. Seriously, because that shows this topic got to you. And I believe the most fascinating subjects are exactly those that make us look at something ordinary like a bird landing nearby and realize there might be so much more going on beneath the surface. And of course, if you enjoy this kind of content that blends curiosity, animal behavior, science, and those everyday mysteries that almost nobody talks about, subscribe to the channel right now, because the upcoming videos are going to make you look at animals, the signs of nature, and even ordinary everyday situations with completely different eyes. Your presence here isn't just a number. It's what builds this community of curious, observant people who are passionate about understanding the hidden details of the world around us. And speaking of hidden details, there's one specific behavior that keeps many researchers up at night when it comes to the subject of birds approaching human beings. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the more researchers study bird behavior, the more they discover something that completely changes the way we see these apparently ordinary encounters. The truth is that many birds possess an extremely advanced memory, and we're not just talking about remembering paths or locating food. Some species can recognize specific human faces, associate behaviors, and even make decisions based on past experiences with certain individuals. Crows, for example, have demonstrated in studies a remarkable ability. They can identify human individuals for years. Yes, years. And what's most curious is that they don't just remember who posed a threat, but also who made them feel safe. That means a single encounter can leave a lasting impact on the bird's mind. It's almost as if an invisible file is being created inside that silent intelligence that observes everything from above. And pigeons, so often overlooked in cities, also hide surprising capabilities. Research shows they can identify patterns, differentiate images, and recognize human routines with a precision that few people imagine. Gradually, science is revealing the fascinating inner workings of how these animals perceive our world. Maybe that's exactly why certain birds seem to always show up near the same people, not by chance, but because there's familiarity, recognition, a connection built through small details that go unnoticed in the rush of daily life. And when you understand that, the feeling shifts completely, because that bird that landed near you might not have just been resting. Maybe it had already been watching your movements before. Maybe it already knew your presence for better than you ever imagined. And that raises an unsettling question. If birds can recognize us, to what extent can they also interpret our emotions, habits, and energy in everyday life? Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because there's a hidden truth in this behavior that almost nobody notices. Birds don't approach people purely of automatic instinct. In many cases, there's a silent combination of observation, repetition, and emotional perception happening right there. And that completely changes the way we see these encounters. Animals pick up on emotional and behavioral patterns far more than we imagine. A calm, predictable person who gives off a sense of safety can end up becoming an acceptable presence for certain urban birds. It sounds simple, but think about it. In the middle of noisy cities, full of sudden movements, honking horns, and constant threats, any peaceful behavior already stands out completely to an animal that lives in a constant state of alertness. And maybe you created that bond without even realizing it. Sometimes a person walks the same path every day, at the same time, with the same movements. Other times, they toss a few crumbs without even noticing, or they simply don't show any aggression when they see birds nearby. Gradually, that bird starts associating that presence with safety, familiarity, routine, and that's when the behavior changes. What's most curious is that many birds observe for a long time before ever approaching. They analyze distance, posture, the speed of movements, and even emotional reactions. It might sound like an exaggeration, but researchers have already noticed that certain species can make quick decisions based on the human behavior around them. And maybe that's exactly why some people attract more birds than others. Not because there's anything magical about them, but because they transmit signals that animals interpret differently. The human mindset tends to overlook these small details of nature, but when we start observing the behind the scenes of these behaviors, everything takes on a whole new meaning. Because sometimes the bird isn't just curious. Sometimes it has already decided that you are not a threat. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because there's a detail that transforms this whole story into something nearly impossible to ignore. The strangest thing isn't when a bird lands near someone just once. The real mystery begins when it happens repeatedly, day after day, as if some kind of silent recognition is taking place. There are accounts of birds that appear at the same time every day, follow certain people along short stretches of a path, or simply stay and watch without showing any fear. And when this starts to repeat itself, a lot of people feel that sensation that's hard to explain, as if some kind of invisible connection is slowly being built. Science tries to understand what's behind this through factors like territorialism, social intelligence, and recognition of human patterns. Some birds create extremely sophisticated mental maps of the environments they live in. They know who tends to pose a threat, who ignores their presence, and who gives off a sense of safety. It's a kind of decision-making system based on memory, observation, and accumulated experience. But there's also the emotional impact of all of this. Because when a wild animal shows unusual familiarity with a human being, something shifts inside our perception. The encounter stops feeling random. And that's where that unsettling doubt is born. Are certain birds merely observing, or do they actually choose certain people? Maybe the hidden truth is that these animals understand far more about us than we ever imagined. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because there's a very fine line between what science can explain and what people feel when they live through this kind of experience. And maybe that's exactly where this subject becomes so fascinating. Because in different cultures around the world, recurring encounters with birds have never been seen as something ordinary. In some ancient traditions, certain birds represent signs of transformation, important changes, and messages from nature. In other places, it's believed that certain birds appear as symbols of protection, good luck, or even silent warnings during specific moments in someone's journey. And the most curious thing is realizing that these interpretations have crossed generations, eras, and completely different ways of thinking. Of course, science talks about adaptive behavior, pattern recognition, and social intelligence, and all of that makes sense. But there's also an emotional side that's impossible to ignore. Because when a bird shows up repeatedly during significant moments in someone's life, it stops feeling like just a random detail. Maybe that's why so many people feel such a strong impact from these encounters. Not necessarily because something supernatural is happening, but because these moments awaken a different perception of the world around us. as if, for a few seconds, the rush of life slows down and the person notices something that would normally pass right by undetected. And maybe what's most impressive in all of this is understanding that animals are also watching us. They analyze our movements, our decisions, our habits, while we almost never realize that nature is noticing us all the time. And when that idea truly sinks in, a lot of things start to take on a different meaning. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because maybe the most important part of all of this is learning to perceive these encounters in a different way. Most people see a bird approaching and simply ignore it. But when you start observing frequency, behavior, and small patterns, something shifts in your perception of reality. If this happens to you, the first thing is not to startle the animal. Many birds approach precisely because they've identified the absence of a threat. A sudden movement, a fright, or an exaggerated attempt to interact can completely break that silent trust built up slowly over time. The most interesting thing is to observe, to notice how long the bird stays nearby, at what times it appears, and how it reacts to your presence. Because sometimes the simplest details hide the greatest revelations. Maybe that bird appears every time you pass through the same place. Maybe it shows up during specific moments of your routine. Or maybe it's simply using you as a safe reference point within an environment full of risks. The truth is that nature creates subtle connections all the time, and almost nobody notices these things happening right before their very eyes. And there's something truly beautiful in all of this. In the middle of a fast-paced life, full of automatic decisions and constant distractions, small encounters like these remind us that we're still part of the natural world, that there's a silent exchange happening between humans and animals all the time. Sometimes, small encounters reveal just how connected to nature we are without even realizing it. And maybe that bird didn't land near you by accident. Maybe you were simply noticed. Comment below. Nature is watching, and in the end, maybe the most fascinating thing isn't just understanding birds. Maybe it's realizing how long we went without noticing these small signs of nature happening right in front of our eyes. If you made it this far, this topic probably stirred up a memory, an experience, or even changed the way you'll observe animals from here on out. And it's exactly that shift in perception that makes this journey so interesting. So tell me something in the comments. What was the strangest or most memorable encounter you've ever had with a bird? I really want to know if other people have gone through similar situations. And if this video made you look at these behaviors in a different way, a like. It helps the channel keep bringing content that makes us see the hidden details of everyday life with more curiosity and attention. And if you enjoy this blend of animal behavior, mysteries of nature, and discoveries that almost nobody notices, feel free to subscribe to the channel, because there are still many curious revelations about the world around us that are worth exploring together. There's a video right here on the side that complements this topic perfectly. Click on it and keep going with me over there.